Welcome to a special transfer edition of the Celtic Way with Tony Haggerty and Sean Martin. And we're delighted to be joined on the pod today by Jason Lee. Now, Jason is a Korean football journalist and expert. And yes, you've guessed it as to why he's here. He's here to enlighten the Celtic supporters and ourselves and help us all expand our knowledge on Celtic's transfer target, Oh Hyeon-gyu. Jason can correct me on my pronunciation of that any second now. But a fee of £2.5 million has reportedly been agreed by Celtic and Suwon Samson Blue Wings, and the Korean striker has been given the green light to travel to Glasgow and seal the switch. So Jason is here to fill us in on everything we need to know about O. So first and foremost, we extend a very warm welcome to you, Jason, and thanks for joining Sean and me in the Celtic Way. We appreciate it greatly. Now you can correct my pronunciation. I'll just call him O. How do you say it, Jason?
No, first of all, thank you for the invitation, guys. Really, really excited for this transfer. I've been keeping an eye on it for a while now because I know Celtics fans may not like the name anymore, but Cho Gyu-sung was also linked to you guys, who is another Korean striker. Both very, very talented strikers. I'm excited that we can finally see another Korean, in Scotland's biggest team. And, if you guys remember, there were two other Korean players before, Ki Dong-young and Cha Do-ri. And Celtic is a team that is very, very familiar to Korean football fans. And I think a lot of people are looking forward to seeing just how Oh Hyeon-gyu, which is you nailed the pronunciation, Tony. You nailed it. To see how Oh can thrive with this move to Europe.
Yeah, that was my first question, Jason, because you were on Twitter and you get very excited about this, didn't you? You said that yourself, that you put out on Twitter that you were excited to see this happen, and basically that's why it's a great opportunity for O, isn't it?
It is a fantastic opportunity for him. I think he said his dream was always to play in Europe, and I think that's the case for pretty much every Korean football player, because Europe is kind of like the center. It's the hub of football nowadays, right? And I'm not trying to say that the Scottish League is any inferior to any other European league, but it is also an amazing opportunity to showcase your talents and maybe get even poached by a lot of the dreams for Korean players is to go to the Premier League, for example. And I think it's a perfect avenue. And I think he's excited for a new journey. It's his opportunity, to ball out for 2 to 3 years and really, really catch the eyes of course, the Celtic fans and of course other European scouts. So I think it's a really dream move for him, and I think it's a great match on paper as well.
On that note, Jason, first of all, thanks for coming on. But one of the things that we hear Celtic manager Ange Postecoglou say often when it comes to transfers and his recruitment process and different things like that is that he doesn't just sign players, he signs people. With that in mind, to the best of your knowledge, obviously, what kind of personality does O have? Is he the type, because he's only 21, but is he the type to be a kind of leading member in the dressing room despite that?
Yeah, for sure. I think this obviously isn't the case for all Korean players, but in general, the Korean players are quite humble. They're always hardworking. They're very, very eager to listen to the manager's instructions. And everywhere they go, they're universally liked by the other players on the team. And I think what speaks to O's personality the most, to me at least, is that he voluntarily enlisted in the military. So in Korea, there's like a mandatory military conscription that every player and every Korean male has to go. And he actually chose to do that really early in his career because he knew that at the end of the day, he wanted to play in the world's football's biggest stage. And I think, to me, that speaks a lot about his character. He's proactively trying to look out for his future and look out. He's always ambitious, right? He's ambitious, but he's also really, really humble. And I think that, in the videos of him speaking and in the videos of his interactions with his national team members that I've seen as well, you're getting a good player, but also a really, really good character as well.
I think the Celtic manager will warm to that, won't he, Sean?
I think so. I've scratched that military service question off the agenda as well, because that's answered already as well. But no, I agree with you, Tony. I think he'll very much like the sound of that as a personality.
Now, when the move first came up, Jason, the player himself said this. Celtic, a prestigious club, gave me a good offer. I think I have a big desire to take on this opportunity. I am cautious to say at this place, but when the previous club said that such an offer had come, I told the club I wanted to go and requested a transfer. It was a situation where we were waiting for the club's position. Now, obviously, that's moved on, but that showed his commitment that he wanted, as you say, he's ambitious and he wanted this move to happen. And as you say, he's maybe thinking ahead that a move to Celtic and then possibly further down the line, he could maybe play in the English Premier League. But he certainly wanted the Celtic move as soon as he heard of their interest.
For sure. And I think this move was a little bit difficult because both the club and the manager at the beginning of the transfer window firmly stated that O was in their plans for the start of the 2023 K-League season. It's a bit different with the K-League in Korea. The season starts actually in February, late February or early March. And so currently right now the teams are in preseason training, and it's difficult to find, like, I'm sure they're in a difficult situation right now to find his replacement in maybe less than a month. But at the end of the day, I think Celtic's proposal was too good to turn down for both the player and the club. And like you said, from the very first moment he got that offer from Celtic, he was very tempted. He was very intrigued by the offer. And ultimately, I just think it needed a little bit of push, a little bit of financial push from Celtic's side, which came. And that was able to convince the manager and the club to accept the offer. And now they're looking for O's replacement.
Because I think the manager at one point said, I couldn't keep breaking his heart. Is that right? So,
Yes.
He envisages the guy crying at the door, having, chapped it many, many times.
I think just to add a little bit of context as well, the difference between O and Cho's team. So Cho plays for the number one team in Korea, and they are owned by Hyundai, which you guys may or may not be familiar with, the Korean car producing company.
Yeah.
And they are very much a big football conglomerate. It's very business oriented, and they will definitely try and get a big fee as possible. Whereas with Suwon, O's team, a lot of their club identity is based on their academy and developing players and shipping them off to bigger teams. And I think they're very much more open to sending their players to Europe because that raises the prestige of their team as well. So I think that's a little bit of difference why the Cho's transfer was a bit more difficult to complete, whereas O was able to get across the finish line.
How do you think he'll cope going from a team like Suwon to Celtic in terms of expectation level and the difference between it? Because you're saying yourself there that there's bigger clubs in Korea. They're not necessarily defined by their pursuit of trophies, and they're certainly not in the way that Celtic are. So how do you think he'll cope in terms of expectation level?
I think mentality-wise, he's a very strong character. He's very, very confident in himself and in his abilities. You're right. You're absolutely right. I think that there will be a little bit of shock that comes to him. Of course, a culture shock moving from Korea to Scotland, very, very different countries. And of course, the team is a little bit different as well. Like Suwon was maybe a mid-table team. They were in the relegation battle for a little bit, whereas Celtic is always challenging for the Scottish title, right? But I think under a very, very capable and encouraging manager like Postecoglou, who has experience, in Asia and has experience bringing over Japanese players to Celtic, I have no doubts that, there might be a little bit of an adjustment period, but if the fans are patient and give him 6 months, maybe 12 months to adapt, O himself is going to do everything in his power to make the adjustment as smooth as possible. And I don't think, at the end of the day, I think that he'll be a great player for you guys.
I suspect that I know the answer to this because of what you said already, and it kind of ties in with what you mentioned about Postecoglou's coaching there, but several players, both new players and players that were already at Celtic, have improved their games overall under Ange Postecoglou. And I suppose, given he seems to have the personality, as you say, and the raw tools to excel at Celtic, I suppose my question is he a coachable player in that respect? Because he might need to adapt the way that he plays the game as a striker.
Absolutely. I think he's 100% a coachable player. And an example that I'd love to give you guys is, so our previous manager in the Korean national team was Paolo Bentu, And his football style is very possession based. It's very proactive, building up from the back, and he requires a certain mold of a forward, of a center forward. And that's pretty different from the way that O usually plays in Suwon. But the 27th player actually that was chosen for the Korean national team to go to Qatar, that would have played if Son, like the guy who plays for Tottenham, couldn't play, was actually O. And I think that speaks to his coachability. At a young age, he was able to get into the national team ahead of more experienced veterans. And, he's eager to learn. He's always eager to fit the system and make things work. So I think that, similarly under Postecoglou, who we know is a brilliant manager, I think that, personally, I am very, very excited to see how Postecoglou helps develop O. And then also I'm excited to see how O fits in Postecoglou's system.
Yeah. Now, he scored, was it 14 in 39 appearances last season? That's a decent ratio, and it included a run of 8 goals in 10 games. Now, that's the kind of goal-scoring prowess that, takes you far in football. And can you see him transferring that into the Scottish Premiership? Because with a club like Celtic, and if he plays, he will be presented with a lot of chances. Jason, Celtic are an attacking football team that create a lot of goal-scoring chances.
For sure. I think he's still working on his finishing abilities, but we have to remember he's only 21, right?
Yeah.
And I also think that his other qualities, his ability to press, his ability to relentlessly attack the defenders, and, he's not afraid to put in a challenge. He's very good in the air. I think that a lot of those abilities will help mitigate any problems in his finishing. But I also have no doubts that the finishing will eventually come up to a standard that fits player that Celtic wants. I'm just saying that because I'm not saying that he's a poor finisher. I'm saying that, with the adjustment of a new league, with the nervousness and the anxiety of playing for a new team and in a big stage like playing for Celtic, I think that, there could be a little bit of bumps, but I also think that, he's confident enough and he's hardworking enough to get through those difficulties and adversities.
Sean, I don't know about you, but my first thought there was Dyson Ryder.
the relentless pressing part.
Yeah.
I think you'll like that as well. Jason, this kind of ties into that as well, and also into what you said earlier on about adjusting to a new country and stuff. But tactically, even though Tony's right, Celtic have a massive amount of possession and they create a hell of a lot of chances, but a Celtic striker doesn't get all that many touches of the ball. And is instead expected to rely on kind of intelligent movement, off-ball qualities like the pressing that you mentioned during games. So are those conditions that you do see him thriving under, even though there'll be an adaptation period, an adjustment period off the pitch?
I think that the system that you described, Sean, I think that's perfect for him. I don't think that he's necessarily the most technical player. For example, since I watched so much Spurs, I don't think that his play style is like Harry Kane. But I think for me, I've heard that his role model, I don't know if you guys are too familiar with his game, but his role model that he told the Korean media was Huntelaar, Dutch forward. And he tries to model his game off of Huntelaar. And I don't know if that's going to be like the perfect fit for Postecoglou. But from what you described, Sean, I think that, I do think that there are some similarities there that he could be a good fit.
Now, we spoke off air and I said to you that Celtic have plundered the J-League in Japan with huge success since Postecoglou took over the reins of the club. Can O's capture be the kind of start of something similar in the K-League? Are there others there, Jason, that you could see making that kind of similar move? Because you say there are lots of the Korean players, it's their dream to maybe play Scotland and then England, stuff like that. Can you see this being the tip of the iceberg kind of thing, or maybe opening the floodgates to that happening too?
Absolutely. The talent-wise, I think that, the Japanese players and the Korean players are very comparable. They are very, very good young players that are hungry and eager to play in Europe. The one difference, Tony, is that it's the military, mandatory military graduation. In Japan, that doesn't exist. So it's much easier for the younger players to head over to Scotland or Turkey or the Netherlands, right? Because they don't have that worry. Whereas in Korea, if you're 23, 24, you're starting to think about, when am I going to either win military exemption by winning, a medal at the Olympics, or the gold medal at the Asian Games? Or am I going to have to enlist and play for the military club? So I think O was in a very unique situation in that he was 21 and he already completed his military service. Actually, Cho Gyu-sung is in the same situation. He also completed his military service early on. So I think that if Celtic looks at these niche players who are very young and very talented, but also have completed their military service, then I think for sure that O can open the floodgates for future Korean players at Celtic.
On that note as well, you kind of touched on this at the very, very start, but if you could go into a wee bit more detail, what would you say Celtic's profile is like in South Korea at this stage? Because you rightly mentioned Ki and Cha played for a few years now since then, but there's still definitely a link between the club and Korea, isn't there?
Absolutely. I think that even on Twitter, I've seen a lot of Korean Celtic, either fan accounts or just Korean Celtic fans that are excited about the move. And I would say that the perception of Celtic, like, it's definitely considered a very big club in Korea. And we also know that a lot of Korean football fans watch the Champions League or the Europa League. So it's not like they haven't had exposure to Celtic. And I also think that Korean fans also keep an eye on what our rivals, Japan, are doing. And we've seen all of these Japanese talents go and thrive in Celtic. And I think it's created a very positive image of Celtic as a club that's very open to accepting Asian players. Because in reality, a lot of Korean fans have had negative experiences where sometimes the players aren't welcomely received, or there's been some incidents of racism or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, with so many Japanese players playing well and enjoying life in Scotland, it's a very positive image for Celtic in Korea. And I think, I personally hope that O's transfer and hopefully a success is just the start for a Korean and then Celtic connection.
I was going to say that, Jason. It must be an exciting time for, yourselves, journalists, and just media alike, and just the country seeing these kind of things happen to your players, and that your football is now seen as a kind of an untapped market, and things could happen in the future.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I had myself on mute there. No, Tony, I think that's a great point, and more than anything else, it's very useful to have someone who, obviously, we've only been looking into for what, the last 2-3 weeks, maybe a month or something like that. Whereas getting someone like yourself on, Jason, who not only knows more about him, but just about the landscape that he's coming from to Scotland, is very, very useful for us, Tony.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you say at the top of the programme, expert and journalist, but I think both of them, in your case, Jason, fit very well, because that's a brilliant card marker. It expands our knowledge as well of the game in your country, the kind of players. And then when you were talking about the Japanese players and the Korean players can be comparable, I mean, Celtic have had unbelievable success with the Japanese players that have come to the club. And if O is anything like the Japanese players that are currently there, then I think people like myself and Sean will get excited about O, and the fact that he's only 21. You're saying there's improvement there in his game, and working under a manager like Ange Postecoglou, who's improved the Japanese guys to a great degree since they've come in. So I think it's a win-win for everybody, really, isn't it?
For sure. And I think it's fairly a low risk signing as well. Like, I don't know the financial situation of Celtic, but I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of Korean marketing going on, and hopefully taking advantage of that with O signing. And that kind of mitigates the risk a little bit. And, if in the worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, it'll be a similar, if not slightly reduced transfer fee back to Korea, and he starts over again. So I think, there's definitely some risk there. I'm not saying there's any risk, but, I think it's worth it considering the upside. And, if he plays and thrives for Celtic, for you guys, for, 3 to 4 years, and then you get a good chunk of transfer fee if you sell him off, I think that's the best case scenario.
It's the dream for you, Jason. He does well at Celtic and then transfers to Spurs.
Yes.
That's the trajectory you want to see him.
Yeah.
To see him go, take over Son's role then, when he decides to call it a day type thing, Is that where you see him? Is that the dream image in your mind?
That's the pathway I'm thinking of. You're exactly right, John.
Jason, this is a kind of looking ahead to the future thing for him, probably too fast, but he's already got one cap for the national team, am I right in saying that? You're saying that there might be the adjustment period, maybe give him 6 months to a year to bed in and different things. In about a year's time, the Asian Cup is expected, the postponed Asian Cup will be taking place. Is that a destination that he's probably looking at by the time he's settled in at Celtic? That's somewhere he wants to be called up for?
For sure. And I think that his main competition right now is the player that Celtic were also linked to, Cho Gyu-sung. Those two are the two young emerging Korean strikers. And the fact that Celtic were linked to both, just shows the ability of the Celtic scouting department. So, if he impresses in Celtic, and Korea are actually in a state right now where they're looking for a new manager. And if he catches the eye of the new manager, then I have no doubts that he'll be right there in contention to start at the Asian Cup. And Korea haven't won for, I think, 50, 60 years, which is really surprising because we're supposed to be one of the top footballing countries in Asia. And, it's probably going to be Son's last Asian Cup. And I don't know how familiar you guys with Kim Min-jae of Napoli, but we have the team to really, really compete this year. And that's why I'm excited for because if he develops under Postecoglou in Scotland, then he's going to help us bring the trophy back home.
Will you be getting up at ridiculous o'clock in the morning to chart O's career progress when Celtic are playing matches, Jason? Will you be tuning in?
I don't think that it's too early for me, Tony, because I'm in Canada right now. So I believe that I only have to wake up. When does Celtic usually play?
It's either lunchtime on a weekend, maybe 3 p.m. at a weekend. If it's midweek, it will be 7:45, 8 p.m. at night. So, I mean, Alistair Johnston's family, they certainly make the games over there. But
no, I'll definitely be tuning in to a lot of Celtic games now.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Jason. That's absolutely brilliant. John, you did have the question about the compulsory military service, but that was well answered, wasn't it?
Yes, no, that's fair enough. You says, I take it he played for the military team that you mentioned, rather than that's part of his compulsory
service.
So
that's what the Korean footballers usually do. They apply to that military team, and if they get accepted, they basically play football while serving in the military. And that's that's helped him a lot too, because that helped him put on a lot of muscle, bulk up, really develop and grow into his frame. And he plays like a tank. I think that a lot of Celtic fans are going to like him.
6'1", Tony. 6'1". He's going to add a different dimension as well in that sense.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Also interesting to say that he volunteered for that very early in his career, because he clearly knew that he had a pathway that he wanted to follow in terms of his football career, and get the military service done and dusted, and then concentrate on his football. So I quite admire that, Jason, as well, that even one so young took that. It's quite a big decision in your life, isn't it?
Yes, very, very much so. And I think that it's going to be more of a trend now, especially if he succeeds. Players can do that and say, let's get it over with. Let's go to Europe as soon as possible. And then let's go from there.
And European clubs will see that as that's something that they will sign players on the back of the fact that they have done their military service, as opposed to ones that haven't. I would have thought, so that ticks that box as well for them, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. That was really, I feel enlightened, Sean. I feel that I know all about now. Yes. What about yourself?
Oh, indeed. I just hope the viewers will get the same impression. Yeah.
Well, finally, it just remains for Sean and myself to say we hope you've enjoyed this transfer episode of the Celtic Way. We cannot thank Jason enough for his time and for letting the Celtic fans out there know a bit more about O. You can follow Jason on Twitter, the link to which is in the description of the video as well as our latest subscription offer for the website. This has been the Celtic Transfer Special with Tony Haggerty, Sean Martin and Jason Lee. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks very much, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Jason. Cheers, Jason. Much appreciated.